All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening to the show, for watching, however you consume Talking Buffalo. I appreciate you guys very, very much. Today's show, as usual, is sponsored by Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbey Road, just minutes down the way from Highmark Stadium. Great place to eat, drink, hang out, really good vibes there. Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbey Road. Real quick, before we get into today's show, too, I want to thank everybody. On the show last night, Joe from Queens was with me live, and I talked about for the first time, I had a lung cancer scare recently, scared the living shit out of me, went through a big process, man. And then I put something on social media on Monday, and not to sound corny, but it meant a lot to hear from so many people, well wishes, things like that. Kind of really gives you a fun perspective on life. You know, social media. Chad DeDominicis, by the way, from Expected Buffalo, is with me on the video side. I forget that we're actually doing an audio show primarily, and people aren't just watching. Chad is with me. We're live on the video side anyway on Monday night. Going to talk some Sabres. But anyway, Chad, you know, I complain a lot about social media and what a cesspool it can be at times for certain things, but there's a good side to it sometimes. And this was certainly it. Like I said, I've just been, I don't know. I felt like, you know, I do the show 5 days a week, Chad. You know, you have a connection to your followers as well, too. I'm sure you do. And I don't know, life is an open book in a lot of ways. So I put it out there anyway, not knowing what people were going to say. And it just, I don't know. It meant a lot to me. A very scary time. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I had to have a PET scan done recently because I have COPD, and they found a nodule in my lung, and they had to go through this whole process, and it was very scary. But for now, anyway, all's well that ends well. But I just very appreciative to everyone out there who's reached out. It truly means a lot to me. Anyway, Chad DeDominicis, Expected Buffalo with me, man. What's going on?
Before you get off of that, it's my turn because I didn't say anything because I started a new job today, so I was very busy earlier today. But I did see that, and I did want to say, you know, I'm happy for you, and I'm glad that all worked out.
Appreciate that.
It's really, you know, not to get too crazy with this. We're gonna get into the crazy stuff of sports and hockey, but I get it. It's an eye opener, man. Life can hit you fast and derail you quickly. So, you know, you gotta, it makes you really appreciate things and appreciate the moments and, you know, all of that. So, you know, I'm happy for you, happy for your family, man. That's great.
I appreciate that, man. And you know what, real quick here, then we'll jump into the show too. Yeah, look, I think that we take things for granted. And we always say when something happens, you lose a loved one, or, you know, you hear about something that happened, you hug your kid a little bit tighter, your wife, your husband a little bit tighter. And you kind of, you get right back to life and you move on. You know, it's just the way it is. It's human nature, just the way people are. But when something like that happens to you, it really is a true eye opener. And I hope I can keep this perspective that I have right now on life, because it is a completely new one. Because, I mean, let's just call it what it is. If you have COPD and you're in your mid 50s, like I am, and then you get hit with a lung cancer, you know, the clock is ticking really, really quick. So it was really good news. It was very scary to wait for the phone call. In fact, I couldn't wait anymore. I actually had to call. I couldn't take it anymore. But anyway, all's well that ends well. Thank you so much. Over at Expected Buffalo, here's what I want to do today, by the way. This is going to be a very Sabres-centric episode, of course. I got Chad. That's one of the reasons why I got Chad with me. I might sneak in a couple Bills questions to you near the end. But I want to go over today, among other things, 10 of what I consider the most embarrassing moments for the Buffalo Sabres in what's been a very embarrassing season. These aren't necessarily power ranked like 1 through 10 or anything like that, but I got 10 things that I want to talk about. I want to get your insight and your recollections from them, some other Sabres stuff as well. Over at Expected Buffalo, before we jump into that, you got something really cool going on that I noticed over the last couple of days involving the Sabres' never-ending drought. What do you guys got going on over at Expected Buffalo right now?
Oh, man, the Expected Buffalo Discord came through. So I will not – look, I put the bracket together, but all of the ideas, like all of the remembering things, not me. So I think we're up to like 400 people in our Discord now, which is awesome.
Wow.
It's a great
Wow,
group.
really?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's not just Sabre stuff too, but it's Bills, it's NHL, lacrosse. We talk about food and music. I mean, we honestly probably have too many channels, but it's a great group. It's very, very, very
Sure.
active. It's always going. Fun group. But so what came from this is it was maybe 2 weeks ago. It just started with just one or two people just throwing, "Hey, remember this? Remember that? Or remember this? Remember that? Remember this?" And it built and it built and it built and it built. And then eventually it got to the point where someone was like, "We should like rank these or have like, oh, college basketball is coming. Let's do a bracket." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Okay." So it took me a week to get to it. Then finally I put it in the group. I said, just re-spam this, like one of the chats, and I'm just gonna bring the whole list together. We probably honestly could have got to 100. We narrowed the field to 64. I know Eddie a few times has joked about having an NIT bracket for this, but we narrowed the field to 64. So 64 moments over the Sabres drought. Really just you just go through it. And what's even more fun for me is what I'm doing. So we have 2 regions up right now you can vote for. Our yacht club region and the tank region. The 2 regions right now that are for voting. The other 2 will go up tomorrow. But what I'm doing in the post, you'll see when you go vote, is what I'm putting in there is reminders, YouTube videos, picture of a tweet or link to an article. So it kind of refreshes you. So doing that and like watching the YouTube videos again or seeing the tweet again just makes you chuckle, laugh, like, oh my God, there it is. And oh man, this is from 2018. This is from 2020. This is from 2015. Like, it's crazy. And it's fun. You have to, we're going to be on 14 years. You kind of got to have fun with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see. I mean, I think there's like 2 or 3 legitimate that will end up winning this thing, but even already, like there's some really close votes. On a few of them, there's already even like a couple upsets, like how we have it ranked, or just like runaway upsets in a few instances. And part of that is on me. I did all the rankings myself. I kind of just thought where it fit.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's fun. I can't wait to see how it all plays out, and as we go here, in the matchups that'll come from it too. So it's it's going to be fun over the next week or 2.
I feel like and it's a great idea. And by the way, I don't even mean that people in the Discord. That's seriously legit cool. But I think we're at a point now when it comes to the Sabres, whether it's the drought as a whole, whether it's this season individually, you almost kind of got to laugh. You almost kind of got to have a little bit of fun with it because, especially if you're a diehard Sabres fan, it'll drive you crazy. It'll drive you mad if you don't find some humor and everything that's going on, which is one of the things. And it's a stroll down memory lane in a lot of bad ways or bad things that have happened to say return to drought with what you're doing. What we're going to be doing tonight is just sticking specifically with this season, some of the most unbelievable moments from this season. I want to ask you a couple questions, though, before we dive into that involving the Sabres. So Dylan Cousins gets traded recently, of course. Bryson they re-signed him a couple days ago to a 1-year extension. That's a little weird to me. But anyway, I digress. My question for you, I feel like I know the answer, but I want to hear this from you. Does like trading away Cousins, does re-signing a guy for next year, does that symbolize to you that if there was some doubt or maybe even question about Kevyn Adams being back next season, do you feel like that pretty much erases most, if not all, that doubt that he will be general manager for what would become a 6th season next year?
I think in a real situation with a owner that isn't known for just, in a sense, making rash decisions, that the answer would be yes. As of a week ago, my understanding is Adams was fine and safe. But again, the way this owner works, who really knows? Who really knows what he's thinking?
Right.
If you remember with Botterill, when Adams got hired, the week before, it was either him or Kim Pegula said that Botterill was safe. The next week he was gone. Now, we later find out the reason for that was because the Pegulas wanted Botterill to fire everybody, and he said no. And Kevyn Adams said, well, I'll do it. And he's, was on his way as a new general manager, and here we are. So, yeah, I think logically and all the signs you've seen, going back to the Darlene having a conversation with him, asking what the future is, and he tells them, and they have that conversation, and then letting him do the Cousins trade, letting him sign players, even letting him start contract negotiations for players that are restricted free agents coming up. That all logically points to he's going to get one more season. And then also, I think if you think about it too, really when Lindy Ruff was hired, he signed a 2-year contract. And I think when he did that, that was the indication that Lindy Ruff and Kevyn Adams had 2 years to fix this. They are married. They are tied to both having now. They both have 1 year left in their contract. In the way that I put it, a week ago when not a week ago, like a couple weeks ago when I wrote the article and things are really starting to look shaky again, is you're not truly in deep trouble until Terry Pegula doesn't owe you anything financially. So when your contracts are up and you're in the final year and he has no more financial connection to you, he could fire them early in the season. He could make changes. I think it's to a point once next season starts that all bets would be off. In that vein, though, if you're going to do it early the next season, then why not just do it now? But again, we're talking about Terry Pegula here. And if he can find an instance to wither down some money that he'll owe you, I think he'll find that opportunity. But again, I don't know. He's out there on this trip that we just went on now. It's a weird trip to pick because you went from Buffalo to Utah to Minnesota to Winnipeg. It's not the nicest trip to go on, but at the same time, if you think about it too, well, it might not be a coincidence that he picked the Utah trip, going out to Utah for the first time, meeting the Utah owner. That all makes sense. Maybe why he chose that trip as the one to go on. And then also, I think what's happening here and what I've been hearing is there's an effort, I think, with the athletic rankings that were horrible. I think with some of the, national kicking around he's getting, is that there is an effort here to try to, I want to put this, rebuild an image maybe around him to show, hey, he's around more.
Sure.
He's at games. He does care. See, he's here. He's there. I know he went out to Montreal earlier in the season, and he had that meeting with the team.
We're going to talk about that later on.
But the interesting part is he didn't stay for the game. He immediately left.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people noticed that, and that was kind of, okay, you flew here to kind of give us a things better turn around. Okay, see you later. So I think that maybe internally, but players, front office didn't have the best look to it. So it's hard to really get a read. It could be he wants to make a change. It could be he wants to improve his image. It could be that he wanted to go meet the Utah owner. It could be he was just bored and wanted to go on a trip with the team. Who knows with this guy, to be perfectly honest, is where I'm going
at. For anyone who out there who doesn't know what Chad was referring to with The Athletic recently had a poll, an owner's poll, and Terry Pegula was pretty much dead last.
He was dead last on literally everything.
Yeah, he
not
was,
even close. Dead last.
He was literally dead last entirely across the board. Pretty embarrassing. Let's put it this way. Let's just say, just for the sake of discussion, okay, you said about Adams and Ruff being married, and I think you're right. But let's just say, for the fun of it, for the sake of this discussion, you're wrong. And let's just say they get to the end of the season, they're dead last in the East, and Ruff gets fired. And they both get fired. Let's just say that happens. Nobody's going to care about what Kevyn Adams' legacy is going to be. And if you do, it's obviously going to be an awful, terrible legacy. Lenny Ruff's a different story. Let's say if the Sabres finish dead last in Eastern Conference, which they are right now, they're 3 points out. They also had 3 games in hand. But as things stand right now, they're 3 points, I should say, clear in the cellar of the Eastern Conference basement. Let's just say whether he gets fired, or let's just say he don't want to do this no more, Chad. Let's just say, you know what? This was too much of a grind for him, too much stressful. Yeah. It wasn't the way he thought it was going to be. The players, whatever, the ownership, management, let's just say for whatever reason, he wants to walk away, whatever it may be. Lindy Ruff is one and done. Mm-hmm. How much, we were going to discuss this with Joe from Queens last night, but didn't get around to it. And then I knew I was going to have you on. So I said, you know what? I'd rather save this for Chad. How much, if at all, do you think Lindy Ruff's legacy could get, I don't say erased, but a little bit at least tainted by how this came about. Him coming back to the team, then being dead last, and him lasting being a one and done coach for whatever reason it may be. How much do you think, if at all, his legacy would be tainted with Buffalo?
I don't think. I hesitate saying this, but in my opinion, I don't think that Lindy Ruff is going to want to fire. Or I'm sorry, Terry Pegula is going to want to fire Lindy Ruff for a second time.
Agreed. I agree.
don't think he'll want to. I think if Ruff is done, whether it's true or not, it's going to be, I'm stepping away. I'm retiring. I'm whatever. I really don't think that Terry Pegula, the most well-known coach you could say in Buffalo history, wants to go down as the owner who fired him 2 times.
Agreed 100%. So let's just go to, let's just say Lindy decides to step down, award it whatever way they want.
I don't think it's going to ruin the legacy, because it's not so much going to be on him. It's going to be on Kevyn Adams as a bad GM. It's going to be on Terry Pegula as a terrible owner. I think in a sense he's 3-4 levels down of being blamed for this. Now, I think if you go through the entirety of the season, there's a couple times I've brought up that there's, I think, things that he has not done well as a coach, that he definitely can carry some blame for, and he does. He carries some blame for the season. For whatever reason, he's not getting this team to win, and some of that does fall on him. But when you say that and you do those things, a lot of the fan reaction is, well, he didn't hire his coaching staff. Well, it's a bad team. Well, it's this. Well, it's that. And I think that gives you the view among fans, for the most part, that if this is indeed a one and done season, it'll be somebody else's fault, not his. And, in a sense, he got out of here at the right time. He realized this was a mess. I'm not going to do this. I'm out. And I think that's what it'll be. I don't think it'll really tarnish his legacy overall in this organization.
That's a good point. It would be more of a black eye that, what's around him failed him more than himself. So I just talked about how, and we're going to kind of sort of a little bit make light. I mean, it's not really funny. A lot of the things that happened during this season are not funny. They're incredibly frustrating. I'm just at a point where all I can do is laugh, because I think this organization sucks. And I've been very vocal about that. I am an emotional fan. I am not an analyst. I don't write about the Sabres. I don't really cover the Sabres per se. I talk to people like yourself who do. So my opinions are obviously a lot more emotional and heated, I should say.
Fair enough.
But for the most part, again, I can only laugh. But one thing I do not think is funny, and one thing I think that really sucks about this season and this organization specifically, is that you got 2 players right now in Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin. Dahlin is one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Tage Thompson is one of the best offensive players in the NHL. They should be celebrated a lot more in Buffalo. I'm not talking like them, necessarily should be Josh Allen, but they should at least be like Matt Milano. You know what I mean? Like, these are guys who should be very popular among Sabres fans. And I think, if anything, they're sympathetic figures, because they're just rotting away their careers right now in an organization that just continues to go absolutely nowhere. How frustrating is it to have 2 players that you get to cover regularly here in Tage and Rasmus that are special players, but again, they're rotting their existence, their careers right now, as things stand, at least anyway, they're just rotting away. That bothers me. This team stinks, and players that should be celebrated, like we celebrated LaFontaine and McGillney and so many of these great players through the years, Chad. It's like, because this team's just so bad,
Yeah, I think it's on different levels, because while Tage, yes, he's a great offensive player. You can make an argument, maybe one of the best pure goal scorers in this league. And how he scores the goals, maybe one of the best shooters is the way to put it in this league. Dahlin is legitimately one of the top 5, 6 defensemen in this league. But nobody knows it because of who he plays for. You put this guy on any good team, any team that's consistently a playoff team, he might even have a Norris Trophy, if not multiple, nominations by now. But being in Buffalo, he doesn't get that recognition. And you see he goes and plays in the 4 Nations, and then you start to, look at Dahlin out there, and when you get the national spotlight on him, and it starts to come a little bit more. So yeah, I think overall, it's definitely it's frustrating to see that go. But at the same time, it gets back to like you look at the roster, you scratch your head, you're like Alex Tuck, Tage Thompson, Darlene. I know Power's been up and down, but you got him. Ryan McLeod doesn't look that bad. Paterka scores. And it just goes and it goes, and you're like, man, they got pieces. They got players. Just it seems it's really it's every year it's a new thing. I mean, this year it's the power play gets you. But really, I mean, I'm not going to get into a whole spiel here, but I think that's the frustrating thing is Tage and Darlene, yeah, great players, and a cornerstone centerman, like winger now, centerman, winger. I don't know, they can't decide what I'm to be. And then you have your cornerstone defenseman, and then maybe you might even have a second cornerstone defenseman behind him. But it's just you can't put the final pieces together. Like you have it. It's not like you're that far away. It's literally like if you just do that one thing or just fix that one thing, you're fine. And not fine, but you're in a playoff race probably. But here we are, 14 years. I don't know, whatever points are out now.
Chad, do you believe that a losing culture is a real thing, or do you think it's just a year by year thing? It feels like whatever could go wrong with this team, whether it's injuries, a couple guys start playing well, then they get paid, and then all of a sudden they're not playing well anymore. Sometimes it's not even that they got it paid. They just play well for a while and you start to get high on them and then they're not playing well anymore. UPL gets a 5-year contract after last year where it looked like, I remember we were talking about this being a bargain because you could do so many things with that contract.
Yeah.
You could still trade him. He could be your number one. He could become a really good number two, whatever it was. All the possibilities were there. But this isn't the same UPL that we're seeing this year that we saw just a year ago. Jack Quinn. I mean, we could keep going on and on with so many players. Like, I'm afraid JJ Paterka looks great right now. How's it going to look next year? You know what I mean? That's
to be fair to him, put together 2 good years back to back. So I think at least him, you can, believe a little bit more in that.
But do you think there's when you hear the term losing culture, do you think that's a real thing?
Yeah, I think it's a real thing in the sense, though, that I mean, look, there's new players that come to this organization. Zucker, McLeod was just in a Stanley Cup final last year. You have guys that have experience winning that you bring in here. So I think it only goes so far to a degree. But I think what happens is you're surrounded by losing so much. When that one thing goes wrong, human nature just goes, here we go.
Yeah.
Like, and it's you lose 2 games and you're like, 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, and 13. Like, I think it wears on you. I think it wears on you mentally. Because what happens, what naturally happens for guys like Darlene, like Tage, is you're a supreme athlete. You know that you're good. You know that you're one of the best players in the league. I'm going to do this myself. That doesn't work in the NHL. Can't. It is a team sport. Yeah. You need to utilize everybody on the ice. So you can't just be. I mean, maybe in one game you could take it over and go, maybe. But what happens is there's more turnovers, there's mistakes, and frustration builds and builds and builds and builds, and then you maybe start taking penalties, or you have a bad turnover, and the puck ends up in your net because they could just said your goaltender can't make saves for you, and it spirals. And I think that is certainly a thing here. How you get away from that, I don't know. You just have to get lucky and win. You can't get rid of your whole team. So, like, you can't. You can't just start over from scratch and be zero. It doesn't work. You can't do a full tear down or rebuild. It doesn't work anymore in today's NHL. Look at the Chicago Blackhawks, what they're going through. Like they tried that and they are just spinning right now because it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So you just got to hope it just hits one year. Hockey's a goofy sport. I don't know how you could be an organization that misses the playoffs 14 years in a row with this in this league, but here we are. So you got to hope you get lucky, and that's not great analysis, but that's kind of the truth of it in a sense.
100%. I think of back to the Bills drought, and the term that we all learned about was just so Billsy. You know what I mean? Like, it was like when you were talking about, whoa, here we go. What's going to happen bad next? It's so Billsy, and that would be the way Bills would lose year after year. Quickly, so I'm going to pull up a comment here on it because, again, we're live on the video side. Ralph Wilson Sr. said, Darlene and Tage are obviously not leaders. Supposed to be a talented team, but not getting nothing out of the team. I personally don't really agree with that much.
No,
We're
that's
not, but I
that's-
mean, obviously they're two very highly skilled players. I feel like Darlene's a pretty good leader. What do you think about that? Or am I wrong?
it's such a crutch to go to. If a
Yeah.
team isn't successful, they're not great leaders. Completely false.
Sure.
Not true. Tage, I think, has really stepped up this year as a leader, being vocal about what is happening on the ice, about what needs to get better, and how he thinks the team needs to play. And I think he's been critical of his teammates at time too, more than I think Darlene even has been.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, what defines a good captain? We're not in the room. We don't know. They've been grooming Darlene for this role for years now. Any type of feedback that I get is that he's tough on his teammates. I mean, for God's sakes, the guy was fighting Peyton Krebs 2 months ago in practice.
Yeah.
Because he was, trying to spark a jolt into him / his frustration. Like,
right.
These guys want to win, especially those two. And I think it's, in a sense, it's disrespectful to say they're not good leaders because we don't know. We're not in that room. You don't know what they're saying. But I can go by what little info I do have that I've been told, what I watch, what I witnessed between the two of them, the way they talk. I mean, Darlene just had a meeting with the general manager wanting to know what the direction of this team is. If he's a bad leader and didn't care, he wouldn't ask for that. Darlene wouldn't ask for that.
Right.
He wanted to know. He wanted to know what he had to do better in himself to push the room to where they needed to go. And, it kind of gets back to the Eichel stuff. Like when he was here, that he was a bad leader and all that. And we don't know, though. And there was more things I've heard about him that didn't, I could maybe buy into a little bit, but I don't think that's the case here. I think that's just a crutch. When things aren't going well, it's Darlene shouldn't have been captain. I mean, how many people wanted to slap a C on Dylan Cousins 2 years ago? And he plays for the Ottawa Senators now. You know what I mean? And if you think about it, when Cousins left too, notice some of the things that were said in that room. We want guys that want to, put the effort in. The vibe is different now in the room.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think it's just the way that people. Again, it's a crutch, and to me, I don't give it attention. I think it's nonsense.
And it's not even just fans who say that a year or so ago, Dylan Cousins was being talked about for being the next captain. I vividly remember doing a live show at Imperial Pizza with Matthew Fairburn, a very respected Sabres beat reporter at The Athletic, along with Chris Baker. And I remember a pretty in-depth conversation, Matt getting into how he thought Dylan Cousins really had that leadership and that captain type qualities. Obviously, it clearly didn't work out with him. One more thing before we get into a break and come back with the 10 worst moments of the season so far. Let's Dylan Cousins real quick. All right. So most people are going to be listening or watching this on Tuesday. Ottawa's going to be in Buffalo on Tuesday. And I think Dylan Cousins returns to Buffalo. What's your reaction to that? And also, I got to ask you this, buddy. Why Dylan Cousins got you on block, man?
Yeah.
Blocked you on Twitter. What's up with that? I think that's kind of fun.
So let's start there. Because I got Ottawa. Particularly the Lockdown Senators podcast got really mad at me for saying that I was blocked by Dylan Cousins. So Cousins scored a goal the other night, and I heard that it was a nice shot. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna search it and see what kind of, maybe he's starting to get a shot back. I wanted to see it. So I just simply searched Dylan Cousins, and you search, like the names pop up, and I was scrolling, and it kind of caught the corner of my eye, and I thought I saw blocked. I was like, But I went down and found the goal. I was like, let me go check that, though. So I went back up and looked. Sure enough, Dylan Cousins blocked. So I clicked on it. I'm like, is this the real Dylan Cousins? And I went, because now on Twitter, when you're blocked, you can still see, and everything. So I went,
yeah.
It is. I thought it was funny. I still think it's funny. It made me, wonder, what was it that set him off? What was the thing? Was it an article? Was it something I said? I'll never know. But yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing there. I don't know. People said I was trying to show up a 22-year-old when he's 24, by the way. No, I just thought it was funny.
It is funny. And people, I'll tell you right now, Chad, not you, people, You're naive if you think these athletes, the majority of them, aren't reading a lot of the shit that's put out about them, good and bad.
He shouldn't be.
Twitter,
Dylan Cousins should not care what I think.
No, he should not. Absolutely should not care. He definitely shouldn't. But I'm telling you, he does. I'm guarantee you, he read whatever it is that you wrote about him. I know this. I don't know him personally, but I can tell you for a fact, these athletes, by and large, they consume a lot of content. I promise you. Anyway, proceed.
So yeah, that was that part of the Cousins situation the last few days. Some Senators fans got mad at me. Even as of like yesterday, there was still people, whatever, Ottawa fans.
What do you think is going to be in Buffalo at the arena for him?
Yeah, so that's why I said tomorrow sounds terrible. Because one, if he scores one goal, all those Ottawa fans are going to come back. I'll have to deal with that. But like, I don't know. Like I think it's a bummer because I don't know. It doesn't seem like Josh Norris is going to play. We'll see. I kind of wish he would be playing, so you kind of can have that Norris against Cousins kind of thing. But well, I mean, I would say it's unlikely, but you never know. We'll see. Especially if he's skating. Maybe he's been skating on his own. He can jump right back in. We'll see.
Is that a little puzzling to you? Not to sidetrack you, because there's actually a comment. I was going to pull it up later, but now because you're talking about it, it feels like a great time. Steve Noble said, "What's up with the Norris undisclosed injury? Is he hurt, or are they being safe because he may be part of an offseason trade and got Pettersson up there?"
No,
I don't think that's got nothing to do with it. But
no,
the injury, I mean, does this seem a little weird to you? How nothing's really being talked about, an undisclosed injury?
No, because I know what it is. My personal philosophy is I don't share the injuries unless the team does.
Nothing wrong with that.
So it's not his shoulder, and that's a good thing because that's what he's had the multiple surgeries on.
Right.
Yeah, and it's something I would classify in the minor category that he had earlier in the season that kind of re-aggravated. And you can think about watching him, the hesitation in a sense when he was playing in his first few games. It makes sense now having that injury. And I think they're just trying to get him right for these last, 10, 12 games. That was their goal. It sounded like they were hoping he would have played against Winnipeg. Obviously he didn't. Right. So, I think he probably gets back in this week. And we'll go from there. But it's nothing serious. It's a minor thing. Of course, it has to happen if you trade him. It comes back up and it's a thing again. But it's something significant, nothing that's going to linger into the offseason, nothing that's going to impact the next season, not related to his shoulder. It's a bummer. It stinks. And nothing to do with Elias Pettersson. I honestly don't think Pettersson is going to be traded. He's actually started to really turn things around in Vancouver and being a good part of them pushing for a playoff race. So, I think any Pettersson dream people have, they can kind of bury that one in their backyard because I think that one's gone.
All right, let's take on the video side, like literally a 5-second break, come back, and I want to run through the 10 worst moments of this Sabres season. And I'm going to say so far because they still got enough time left to have some more follies and shenanigans. So I'll be right back with Chad. All right, I am back here with Chad DeDominicis from Expected Buffalo, talking Sabres today on Talking Buffalo, recording this live on Monday night on the video side. Tell you what, well over 600 people too on the live chat.
Love it.
Pretty cool, man, for a team that's not playing well that I don't cover that much. So I guess there is still an audience. Well, maybe people just like Chad. I'm sure. I'm sure that's what it is. But anyway, here's what I want to do. I'm going to run down. I got the 10 worst moments of the Sabres season. And I just want to get a thought or a take from you on each of these. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. And I'll preface this by saying this. I sort of got them ranked from 10 to 1 in my personal opinion, but they're not really set in stone. So this isn't necessarily a countdown per se, but this is the 10 worst moments that I can remember or that I've heard about, that I've read about. And I'll start with the first one at 10. It was game 12. They had a 13-game winless streak earlier in the season, and they played at home against Toronto. And it felt that, and I don't know how much you remember. Again, you're writing, but you're covering every damn game.
Some of these have blended into the background, but
yeah, right. But that Toronto game, what stuck out to me is, look, I've been around for a long time. I've been a Sabres fan for a long time. I know how it works. I know the Toronto crowd is always lively, It always feels like neutral ice almost. It's almost like a 50-50 split at times. This game felt like it was 85-90% Toronto fans. This felt like a true road game for the Sabres. They were getting booed. Toronto, the crowd was going crazy for Toronto.
Wasn't it like a holiday weekend too?
I believe so.
Correctly.
I know it was during their winless streak. Yes, I believe it was. But this felt like a true road game for the Sabres. And I just remember saying to myself, this ain't typical Toronto Buffalo. This is just embarrassing. To be the road team in your own building, your own rink, to me was just it was pretty disgraceful. So again, I really don't know. There's not much to add to that. But that was my first one. And then my second one was, which would be number 9. We're going to talk about the 4-goal blown lead. That's coming, obviously, spoiler alert, much later. But they also, the next time they played Colorado, they had a 3-goal lead in Colorado, and they lost the rematch 6-5. This was on January 2nd. So new year, new Sabres, my ass, because the first game of the calendar year, they had a 2-goal lead with 2 minutes and 26 seconds left in the game. Makar scored, and then I think Doan scored or something like that with 8 seconds left. They lose in overtime. You remember that game? They lose 6-5. They had a 3-goal lead blown. So they had a 4-goal lead and a 3-goal lead, 2 separate games against Colorado, and they blew them both. Just,
yeah. So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get angry anymore at games or with the team in general. That part of my life is behind me. There's really no more yelling podcasts that you see me put together. Just not what I do anymore.
Right.
Those 2 games are probably the most angry I've been at games about games in a long time. The first one, which is one of them down your list, they blew it at home. I was in everybody needs to be fired mode. The second one, same thing, set me off to the point where I actually threw my phone into the ground and put a small crack in it. I do have a new phone now, so the cracked phone is gone. But made me throw my phone on the ground. I have carpets, but still, it did its damage. Those 2 games, man, those 2 games will stick with me. And
sure.
I don't even think they had beyond that. The frustrating beyond all belief.
Well, number 8 on my list, another bad game. March 4th, home ice. They lose 6-2 to the San Jose Sharks. I remember this game has stuck out with me because I was recording episode 1000 of Talking Buffalo. It was live at Sunny Reds, and I had Tyler Dunn and Joe Biscaglia with me, and we kind of had on in the background. It was like, what is going on here? They're playing the freaking San Jose Sharks, the worst team in the NHL, and they lost 6-2 at home. That's where you got a problem with just guts and fortitude on your team. You can't lose 6-2 at home to literally one of the few teams in the league that's actually worse than you in the standings. That was, in terms of a minute 1 to minute 60 game, maybe the most embarrassing out of all these, possibly.
I don't know if I go there. I mean, it was. I remember that. It was their 3rd game in 4 nights, which is never a good thing. With some travel mixed in. That was one of the games this year too, where Luukkonen was letting every single shot in. If I remember correctly, San Jose scored from the corner on one of their goals. Actually, I know they did because the Sabres just got back in the game to make it a 1-goal game. And 2 or 3 minutes later, San Jose went back up. I think that made it 3-2. San Jose went back up 4-2 when San Jose scored from the corner. Someone just threw a puck from the corner that went through Luukkonen's legs and into the net. And I think I remember sitting on my couch and I let out a loud groan when that puck went in. It's coming back to me now. So, yeah, I don't think the performance in that game was horrendous. It wasn't great.
Right.
But they were tired 3 and 4 nights with some travel. Your goaltender was a mess. And look at San Jose. San Jose is a better team than their record, especially the way they're playing right now. They are playing really good hockey right now. Celebrini and those other guys in that team are going. So I'll give some. I know they're the worst team in the league, but the way they played the last month and a half, they've been a much better team, and the Sabres kind of just caught them in that swoon.
Well, here's the thing, though. I only got this 8th.
There's more to go. Yeah.
Let's go to 7 here. This was just a couple weeks ago. Recently, March 12th, they go to Detroit and they get shellacked 7-3. and Buffalo-born Patrick Kane as a 5-point night. I just thought it was really.
That was another Luukkonen night. That was another thing.
Yeah.
Luukkonen making no saves night. Yeah. It's
Just
funny. A lot of these are Luukkonen doesn't make save nights, but
for sure. But Patrick Kane getting 5 points.
Yeah.
I go back to, I remember doing a live show with you at Imperial Pizza. This was when Patrick Kane was still coming off the surgery. He hadn't signed with anybody yet. Ultimately, of course, he signed with Detroit. But I remember us discussing the possibility of him and discussing with a lot of people. And it just felt like there was a good chance that Pat Kane was going to come here. Obviously, I don't even know that it came close to happening.
No.
No, probably not. I'm sure you're right. But anyway, it's just a point. It's Patrick Kane. It's Buffalo. You go to Detroit, and your boy just throws up 5 points on you. And just an absolute disgrace of a hockey game. So,
yeah, he got me last. Patrick Kane got me last year. I'll give him credit. This year is more right though. He's a little bit of a power play merchant this year, which is frustrating. That of course he still puts up 5 points on you. But
yeah. All right. So number 6, and look, I know the play was a bang. Okay, this is the Sabres.
This one made the bracket.
It made the expected Buffalo bracket. They scored on themselves. Okay. Now look, I had people were saying it was 6-on-4. No. Okay, they had to touch the puck, but. That said, and I get it. You didn't see the play. Tage is dropping it back, goes off the boards. Kind of a freak play. But just the symbolism of being down a goal, having an opportunity to go up to, not recognizing that, and ultimately throwing it back to the point and scoring on your own net is just, I said Billsy, that's so Sabres-y from just literally a week ago. And of course, it becomes a national punchline on social media. I see every hockey outlet in the world, sports outlet in the world, tweeting the video and making fun of it. That's kind of like when you get to the point, Chad, where it's like, well, how many different things could go wrong? This was just last week. It's like, all I could do is laugh, right? I mean,
and it's kind of what we talked about in the beginning here, where it's like, come on, man. Like, of course that's going to bounce off the boards and go in the net. Like, 99% of the time that bounces off the boards and goes into the corner. Like, sure, our luck, this team, we always lose. It's going to perfectly hit the wall and go into the net. Like, it's
just wild. And also, when you watch the video, if you weren't watching the game live, even if you just listened to the video, I should say, Rob Ray is pleading
to get the puck
to let them touch the puck. Even after the puck goes in the net, he's still, let him touch the puck. He was still, he was just befuddled at how we'll just say how the sequence played out. It just, again, insanity right there. And that's only number 6. Now, people could argue that could be higher too. Again, this isn't a science right now with my rankings. Number 5 is something that you mentioned earlier in the show. For me, that was the Montreal. It was December 17th. Terry Pegula goes to Montreal. He meets with the team. He doesn't speak because he don't never speak to the media, but we get the reports that him saying the solution is in the room. So I call it the solution is in the room game. Yeah, you get your pep talk from your owner. You're playing a team that's not good really in the stand. At least not in the stand. He's not that good anyway. They are going to play the Sabres, of course. But you go to Montreal and you freaking lose 6-1, which was loss number 11 in a row for the Buffalo Sabres during the 13-game winless streak. But yeah, the Terry Pegula, the solution is in the room report, and then you go lose by 5 in Montreal. Just, again, just an absolutely embarrassing black eye for the Sabres.
I do want to say one thing. It's semantics, but it does bother me every time it comes up. Terry Pegula flew to Montreal. First thing he did was he spoke with the entire hockey operations department, the ones that were there, and then everyone else called in on a Zoom, Teams, whatever you want to call it. And I mean everybody, scouts, player development, every single hockey operations staff member was on this call. And Terry spoke to that group, gave the messaging he gave, which I think some of the reporting that came out of it was a little bit unfair. It was more of the Terry believes in everything, everybody's great, and that's not really how it went. It was more like, I believe in this group, this front office, but things have to be fixed, and if things do not start to change or get better, then there's going to need to be decisions made. that's that part of it. Then Terry went down to the room with Kevyn Adams to speak to the players. But my understanding is Kevyn Adams did the majority of the speaking in that. And I think that's where the belief in the room thing came from. So it's semantics, but I always feel like we should correct what actually happened that day. And then, Terry just meets with Adams and Ruff himself and then flies out that same day.
Okay.
But that's the timeline of what happened. Just so I like to just be clear, because I think there's a lot of
I appreciate you clearing a lot of that up
about what actually happened that day.
Mhm.
And that's what really occurred.
All right, well, let's kind of rephrase this then, even if so now I'll be accurate, being armed with better information. Terry Pegula met with the organization,
Yes.
was in the presence of the players, while Kevyn Adams did a lot of speaking, but Terry
did talk a little bit, but it was mostly Adams.
Terry Pegula's presence was certainly known and felt, and then they go out on the ice and they lose 6-1 to the otherwise lowly, when they're not playing the Sabres, for the most part, Montreal Canadiens.
Hey,
So
they're almost a playoff team. They're right there.
well, they keep playing the Sabres, they'll definitely be a playoff team. 3-0-1 against them this year, or 3-0. No, they're 4-0 against them. What the hell am I talking?
4-0 against
4-0 against the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres got 1 point out of a possible 8 against them. That could have been on the list. Let's give that an honorable mention. The Sabres getting 1 point out of 8 against the Montreal Canadiens this year.
Again, they're 2 points out of a playoff spot, so they're way better than the Sabres this year. So that's not that crazy.
Sure. Number 4, Penguins goalie Alex.
This was brutal.
Nedeljkovic scoring on them. And by the way, all these embarrassing things, the blown leads, the other things that we're still going to get to here in just a few minutes, a lot of this stuff happened on their home ice. The San Jose loss, a lot of the things we've already talked about. This was also in Buffalo. The Penguins goalie scoring on them. So the Sabres have scored on themselves this year, and they've had an opposing goalie score on them. This was January 17th. Again, another one of those. I didn't watch the game. I'm going to be honest with you. In fact, I'm pretty sure I went on Twitter later that night and started seeing the replays and started laughing my ass off. Because I'm like,
pretty sure Nedeljkovic had a 2.92. I think he had an assist in that game also.
Yeah, that's just it's craziness, man. I mean, I really don't know what else to add. You're letting goalies score goals on you, man. It sucks. Number 3, this is the one thing that I have that's not on the ice, but it was just such a black eye on the organization and the way it was perceived, maybe more than anything else. But the Kevyn Adams presser on going back to December 6th. We'll call it the palm tree presser because that's what everyone would identify it with, talking about the palm trees, the taxes, and players got to want to come here, this and that. Quickly here, your recollections from that press conference. What were your takeaways from that? To me, this looked like a guy who just, if there was any question about it beforehand, is just in over his head. And I've always said, for somebody, if a general manager is complaining that nobody wants to come here, part of your job as a GM is to be a salesperson. You got to make people want to buy into what you're selling. You want to make people want to come here, make them want to come here. It seems like he has no ability to do that. But anyway, saying about me, I want to get your takeaways from what you remember from that. So
my take on that entire thing has always been, and to this day remains, the quote was taken way out of context, because what people focused on was him saying, we can't get players here, and then I don't remember the exact quotes, but because palm trees and the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Did say that, but you cut off the important part, because what he said leading into that is how we get players to come here is we start playing better, we be a playoff team, and start to perform better on the ice. And then he went into, it also doesn't help that we don't have palm trees and we have taxes. Look, the palm trees thing, okay, that's maybe a little bit much.
It's a
the taxes thing is real. It's real to the point where the NHL is going to adjust things to make the tax better across the board. It's not a thing anymore. So that is a legitimate thing. That is a legitimate thing in the NHL, and that's real. It doesn't help them. Of course, if you're winning and you're good, people won't care. But when you're not, and they're like, okay, yeah, you're going to pay me more money, but like, I mean, the tax on it's not going to be that much money that when I'll you're going to pay me 6, so they're going to pay me 4, but I get all 4 here. I get 3.5 over here. You know what I mean? So like that's, it's a thing. And I also think too, because I don't think this was a sign, like you said, of anything of him over his head. I think what we saw happen here is frustration boil over from Kevyn Adams' part that he really can't say exactly what is holding him back from doing certain things. And I have the belief, and people don't believe me or push back on it, but I have to this point on March 24th have not been proven otherwise that Jeff Skinner money is going to sit there this entire season while they finish in last place. That there is some sort of financial restriction in the organization. They have the smallest scouting staff, I believe, in the league. Lindy Ruff was not allowed to hire new assistants. You could say that he wanted to keep them and all of these things. Like, no, I'm not buying it. Like Detroit just hired a new coach in the middle of the season. What does he do? He brings somebody with him and they fire somebody else off the former staff. He would probably have brought one person, but he brings none. He keeps off Don Granato's staff. We saw how that's going to go. And what's going to happen in the offseason when Adams and Ruff stays is like 3 of that coaching staff is going to go now. They'll be the sacrificial lambs.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the spending. You could tell me rebuild, entry-level contracts, blah, 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 blah. All you want. Fact of the matter is this team is one of the lowest spending teams over the last 4 years. Only the Anaheim Ducks have spent less than them over the last 3 to 4 years. And again, it continued this season in a season where they sat in the summer and told you it was very important to be a playoff team and to do whatever it can to be better. But that cap space sat there from day one of training camp to the end of the season unused. Not used at all. Just sat there the entire season.
Yeah.
And this is the year where you got the most cap benefit from that Jeff Skinner buyout. The next 2 or 3 years, it's not as good. It actually jumps, and it's going to be a pain in the ass. But they wasted it. And I think all I'm trying to go to, and it's not defensive Adams, but it's just human nature. Just think about it. You're meeting with your boss, and you can't sell out somebody else. Because the only reason Kevyn Adams still has that job is because he goes and takes the bullets for Terry Pegula. And he knows that. He can't be like, well, so what do you start doing? Palm trees. Texas. And nobody wants to come here. Like, you start throwing out things and you stumble and frustration builds, and then that's where it goes. That's been my take on that entire press conference from day one. I'm not saying it was a bad look. It was a bad look. It was a black eye. It was another moment. It made our bracket for like most memorable things. But I think when you start to add in human nature and you start to pull some of the pieces away and really look at some of the actual quotes and not just pull certain things, if you take a step back, it's not as bad as it was made out to be, but still also not a great thing.
Very fair. All right, so I got number 2 here. And this is going back to that first Colorado game. The 4-0 lead. They're at home. They're playing Colorado. They look incredible. I remember it so well because I was at Ebenezer Ale House. I was doing trivia night. I went there with 2 buddies. Got some soggy chicken fingers. Sorry, Ebenezer, but those chicken fingers were kind of whack, man. Fries were pretty good. Great menu, that Ebenezer, but not the fingers, man. Anyway, I remember it was 4-0. I think Colorado might have scored once early in the second period, and it was 4-1 when we left. And then I stopped and I got some ice cream because I'm a fatso, and I guess, chicken fingers and fries weren't enough. So I stopped at Nick's Car Laps on Union Road, got some ice cream. I got a milkshake, got home, jumped on my computer, turned the TV on in my office. I'm like, what the fuck just happened here? The Sabres blew a 4-0 lead. That was loss 4 of what would become a 13-game winless streak for the Sabres. Do you feel like that game, maybe more than any other, is just symbolic of how far this team's fallen or how far this team still has to go? The fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they ever in their history blew a 4-goal home lead prior to this game. I'm almost positive, not quite. If they did, it's very rare. Dude, they blew a 4-goal lead at home. You can't do that. I don't care how good the other team is. So that's why it's second from the top for me.
I will say that game, I think, ended their season, sitting here today. Yeah. I think that was the game that ended their season. I think it shook them. I think it shook that room. And They clearly didn't recover from it for a couple weeks from it. I think that really got them into, like we talked about again, we're coming back to it. That
Great point.
oh God, here we go. You have that one, and then it's that's lost 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 13. And
You know what? That and Chad, so you're right, because that was game 4. And just I got to get a brief little look because now I know they put waived. All right, so now they're still 13 points out. But I remember for a long time we were like, the Sabres lost 13 in a row, or were winless, I should say, in 13.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say they even managed to go 500 during that span. You can add another 8 to 10 points. They're in the playoff mix very, very much.
You're in the conversation. Yeah.
Right. And who knows if they would have been in the playoff mix, although knowing the way this team's been, every time they start to get close, they'll lose 4 or 5 in a row to go right back down. But yeah, that game specifically, that's a great point that you just made. That, for all intents and purposes, probably ended realistically their chances of having a good season and making the playoffs. For me, this is number 1, and you might not agree, and a lot of people might not agree, but I have a kind of a personal reason for this being my number 1. And that was the unanswered dirty hit against New Jersey. Again, on your home ice, Stefan Nason just clocked Tage Thompson in the head, and it went unanswered. It went unanswered in the moment, and then in the locker room, the Sabres won that game. I believe it was 4-3. They won that game.
Yep.
And Lindy Ruff, a coach who I have been a big fan of for a long time, I got really annoyed by what he said. Other players talking about the win being the most important thing. I'm like, you are last place in the fucking conference. You're going nowhere. Your star player just took a shot to the head. You cannot let that go unanswered. To their credit since then, because it's happened a couple other times in instances. I know Krebs got in a fight recently. So I'll give them some credit from maybe learning from this, Chad, a little bit.
Yeah.
But that play and the Sabres' response in the moment by not doing anything and their responses in the locker room after the game, this made it for me personally go from a team that is having yet another bad, disappointing, underwhelming season to a team that I just don't like. Like, they became unlikable to me between the no response and then the locker room after. Like, if that was Josh Allen or somebody like that and he got clocked with a dirty hit, there would have been beef going on that sideline immediately. And who gives a shit? And then the Bills are good. In the case of the Sabres, what the hell do you got to lose, man?
Yeah.
Empty the bank, go crazy.
There's a couple of things of it too. And I remember this game very well, not only for the moment that it happened, but this was one of the 2 games this year that I attended was this game. So I think there's a couple of things out of this. So I think the locker room reaction, and I said it on that day, and I'll say it again now. The players saying getting that win was important and not taking a penalty or doing other things to jeopardize that game. Well, I agree with you. They're in last place. Who gives a shit? This was 2 months ago, whatever it was. You're a professional athlete. You're not thinking we're in last place. Who cares? You're thinking we got to get going. Time is running out. So if we sit there and say, you know what? It's a third period. What are we going to do? Let's go play out this game. We'll catch them another day, whatever, this, that, fine. Because I think anything that happens after in the initial moment is nonsense anyways. Who cares? It's performative. You didn't react in the moment, and that's what matters. You want to go fight Jack Hughes or run Jack Hughes 3 minutes later? That's silly. That's stupid. Like, what does that prove? So I think not reacting in the moment can be anything after that moot. So if they want to say we just want to go win the game, whatever, fine. I get that from a professional athlete point and your mind and the way they thought. I had no issue with that. It is what it is. But I think that not reacting in the moment, while I understand, because even being at the game myself, I didn't see the hit. The puck was going up the ice. That's where it was going. I just heard kind of the few people in the arena that did see it, the murmurs from the, when something happens, turn around and there's Tage on the ice. I didn't know what happened until I saw the replay. So I think if you think about it too, being a player on the ice, some guys had their back turned or returning or watching the puck going the other way and you miss it. Now, I understand that, but in the moment, it doesn't matter. Grab somebody. Tage laying on the ice with his helmet off. Something happened, so just the closest guy in white, just grab him. Just grab him and whatever. And if you were wrong, you picked the wrong guy, then you'll deal with that. But you can then say, well, I didn't know my guy was on the ice. I went and grabbed somebody, and even if you don't drop the gloves, just do something, not just skate around and stand around and all of that. So I think again, it was some unfortunate circumstances that put some guys in some situations. The player that I think consistently has showed us the failure to step up for his teammates or do anything that was on the ice is Matthias Samuelsson, because not only was it that time, it's happened 2 or 3 more times now. And I even kind of gave him a pass that night of, he didn't see it. And, I saw it. Look at the video. He's turning away, looking up the ice. I get it. But then it happens again. Not to that degree, but again. And then again. And then even the other night, who was it? Byram recently, was getting punched in the back of the head by some no-name guy in Carolina. And, 5'9" Zach Benson is trying to go through 4 guys to help out his guy. And Matthias Samuelsson, he's just standing there, biggest guy on the ice, and just hold this guy here. I don't, hold somebody back. And, he's not good enough to let that go. And maybe that's not his game. And sure, fine, I guess. But you wear a letter on this team. And that has to mean something. You're the biggest guy on the ice. You got to do something. And you're not good enough in your play for me to overlook it. If it's Owen Power out there and he doesn't want then I go, it's not his game. But he's a really good player, does other things. It is what it is. I get he's 6'6", but that's not what he does. That's not forgivable for Samuelsson. You're essentially at this point, you're a third line player that has a letter on your jersey. You can't do it over and over again, not respond.
I was hoping and waiting for you to bring him up, because you talked earlier about how the Colorado 4-goal blown lead kind of lost the season for them. I feel like if it wasn't already a foregone conclusion, I think the New Jersey game, the hit on Tage, of all the players on the team, I feel like that's where Matthias Samuelsson, they lost the fans for good. I don't think there's any coming back from him. I don't think the fans, they pointed him out. They continue to point him out. Like you said, there's been more incidences since. I don't think there's any coming back from him. I don't know how easily tradable he is. I don't know enough about hockey to know between his contract, his talent level, what team may be interested in him. I don't know. I don't know if he's a buyout candidate, but I do know that I think after this season, I don't think you could carry on with Samuelsson on this team. I can't remember the last time fans, from my more limited knowledge of the team or following the team a little more from afar, I can't remember the last time fans universally hated a player on this team like they do Samuelsson at this point. You agree with that? Or not?
I think
again, you're more in the weeds than
I think there's been worse for different reasons. I think there's been more, Cody Eakin, Vladimir Sobotka, those kind of guys. There's been more for different reasons.
Been a minute.
There's been bigger punching bags, I guess you could say.
Sure. All right. So I had 2, by the way. I don't really need to talk about it, but honorable mentions, I guess we'll call them. Gilbert. It was the very next game. I think it was Gilbert fighting Olivier 3 seconds in. That just felt totally staged. Like we didn't do shit.
It wasn't though. It wasn't. Both Olivier and Gilbert said it was not. And I will say too, I know he's on the team anymore, but if anybody willingly fights Matthew Olivier, you get my credit. That is the toughest guy in the league.
Even I know that. Yeah.
If you willingly fight that guy, you get full credit. I don't care.
Yeah. And then the other one was it was Carolina. And it was
that was bad.
Started the game.
And handling Cousins, yeah.
Yeah, Dylan Cousins just dropped 4 seconds in the game. Yeah. I had Mike McDonald from Damon College, another live show with me, and we sat down and literally just got wings and started watching the game in 4 seconds. It's like, oh, here we go. Oh shit, Dylan Cousins just got beat up. Like four
I don't know why. I don't know why Cousins would have done that. Because if you just, not to mention that he got ragged out by Kakanyemi, but Carolina going into that game, I think, lost 5 in a row. There was a lot of questioning. The Mikko Rantanen stuff was really hot and heavy then, and he eventually did get traded. There was no need to give that team a jolt. And again, that just kind of gets into to the IQ in a sense that he has. And I'm not trying to kick him when he's gone, but
sure.
just not understanding situationally. And that was a prime example. There was no need to do that. Just no, skate away. Not to mention, this guy hasn't fought anybody since he got manhandled against the Philadelphia guy a year ago.
And there's a lot
That
of
is the
people out there.
situation you're going to pick to go with a guy. Just, yeah, for me, that was one of the final, like, I can't do it with this guy anymore moments.
There's a school of thought that I've heard from people that fight that Cousins got in, not this year, before though, the one where he got hurt, really kind of derailed his play going forward. Now, so far, so good with what he's done with Ottawa early on, but it really derailed the rest of his Buffalo career. I want to pull up a couple comments real quick. Not really discussion worthy, but I wanted to point out. Steve Noble said, all these bad things happen, and the next day they'll go on and beat it like a Vegas and Winnipeg or Edmonton. It's very frustrating. It really is frustrating. I mean, the Winnipeg game was weird because
that's hockey, baby. That is hockey. Any given night,
that Vegas
teams
game
beat good teams, man. It happens. That's hockey.
That Vegas game was a lot of fun. I got to admit,
that was a lot of fun. That was, you know what? Funny enough, Steve Noble. I was in Texas with Steve, at the SCA Steak Cook-Off World Championships. Steve is a really good steak cook, by the way. And he let me and our team cook with them for the entire week. And I was with Steve in Texas, and we had the Vegas game on my phone.
It was a great game. I was
fun.
I don't want to allow myself to enjoy a Sabres game, but I had no choice because it was just it was a very entertaining game. Tooch also said other cities equal hockey town with a drinking problem. Buffalo is a drinking town with a hockey problem. Yeah, you not lying about that.
That's kind of funny.
Real quick, because I want to get to two guys that I want to ask you about specifically. Then we're going to get out of here. This isn't one of them. Steve also wanted Quinn. Quinn is very much fallen out of favor with the fans as well. That is absolutely true. His place is, it's like he can shoot and that's it. I don't know what's going on with him.
He doesn't shoot anymore this year. He won't shoot.
Is he, because he's going to be a restricted free agent, correct? Is he salvageable right now, do you think? Or do you think he's damaged goods where it's going to require maybe a change of scenery for him to become anything in this league? Do you feel he's salvageable, or do you think, nah, not part of this team going forward if you're thinking about being good?
Here's how I answer this. Is he salvageable? Yes. Do I want to take the bet next season and do it again? Or find out? That's where I get stuck. I don't know. And look, if he was shooting a ton and the puck just wasn't going in, just having a bad shooting season, all right, let's run it back. Bad shooting luck. I know he's a finisher. He could score. But there's nothing. He won't shoot. So much offense dies on his stick this year. Maybe it's the Achilles injury, but I don't know, because last year he could skate just fine when he came back. The skating is gone. He looks slow. Decisiveness isn't there anymore. He's not attacking the net. He can't decide what to do. The power play is bad. The turnovers. And, oh, by the way, we just had the other day, he doesn't show up to a team meeting. He's late or oversleeps, whatever.
What the hell, man? On the road, too.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're not playing well, you can't be late for team meetings. I'm sorry. You need to be the first one at those meetings. And you need to be at a meeting before that, figuring out why you are having a horrendous season.
Yeah.
Not oversleeping or whatever happened. Like,
I wanted to ask you before we get out of here. I got two more guys I want to ask you about. One of them is a current Sabre. One of them is a future Sabre. A quiet statistical second season right now for a high first round draft pick, Zach Benson. 11 goals, 30 points this year. Where are we at with him? Now, I know there's a lot of circumstances. It feels like he's on a different line with different line mates literally every game. He's on the fourth line. He's on the first line, third line, you name it. He's played there. And he's young. Obviously, he's very young still. How are you feeling about him? How should we be feeling about Zach Benson right now as he winds down what's his now second full season in the NHL?
I feel fine. Great about him even. Look, I use Zach Benson in the phrase we use in Sabres Twitter is puck knower. Zach Benson for me is the puck knower test. I get it, the points and the goals are not there. But we'll get to the numbers in a second. If you just watch him play, smallest guy on the ice, goes in for every puck, gives you 100% effort, wins those battles against bigger guys. There are not many players on this team that feed the puck to the danger zones like he does. The one game that he got to play on that top line a couple of weeks ago, I forgot what game it was. We saw that. I think he had 2 points in that night. He got the puck to the middle of the ice consistently, and he goes to the middle of the ice consistently where you score goals. He knows where to go. And defensively, he is one of the smarter IQ, not even really defensively this entire game, the way he sees the ice, the way he the vision he has. It reminds me a bit of Reinhart. And he'll never, to be very clear, will never be the offensive upside of Sam Reinhart.
Mm-hmm.
But the lack of skill that he has in his skating, I think he's a better skater than Reinhart and a little bit faster. But it's okay because he sees the ice and he reads the ice so well that he can get through that and he can still be successful like we've seen. So defensively, from a number standpoint, he is one of the better defensive players in this league this year from the way he is graded out in public models. For a 19-year-old to be that impressive defensively really says a lot. It is critical to understand that because he, in a sense, has the difficult part down. Players that are young have a hard time adjusting to this league defensively. To have him have that, the hard part done at 19, man, you can improve the skating. Go to power skating classes. You can believe that the offense is going to come because he'll play with some better players. And I don't think he'll ever be a prolific scorer because I don't think his shot will ever get to that point. Is he a guy that can be a 15-30, 15 goals, 30 assists guy if you put him in the middle six of your lineup? Absolutely. And I think it's really when those people say he should have, he still, believe it or not, he still can't even go to the AHL. He's that young that if they send him down, he'd have to go back to juniors.
Mm-hmm.
That people who believe that he should go down and he's not ready for the league, you just don't know, to be respectful. Sorry, but you don't know what you're watching. He is an NHL player, 100%, and there are things that he does need to work on. Absolutely, but he's 19 years old. Of course, there's things he needs to work on. But this is a guy that you will put in the middle six of your lineup when you hopefully are a good team. And he's a guy who will agitate the opponent. He is a guy that'll be frustrating to play. You want to be difficult to play against. It's always not, I got to have the 6'4" guy who's going to go run people through the wall. It's the little guy where this little shit won't stop running up me on the boards, taking the puck from me and frustrating and getting in my face and pushing me in the crease. Like, it doesn't matter how big or tall you are. You have to have the desire to do that, and he does. Yeah. And then you put his game on top of that. Man, I am extremely excited about this kid. And if you can get a few little tweaks offensively in his game, that is a truly special player that's going to be a core piece of why your team, if they can put it all together, is going to be pretty good moving forward.
The last guy I want to ask you about this year's first round pick, Constantine Helenius. How's he been looking from what you've heard? Is there a good chance he's up next season? I feel like there's not a lot, even if it's not next year and it's 2 years or whatever, but I feel like there's not a lot of selling points right now for the average Sabres fan. He could really sell me on something that would excite me. He could be one of them, though. Where do you feel like we're at with him? You still got some time before he's up as the Buffalo Sabre?
I think so. He started off really good this season. I watched the Amerks a lot because I do a lot of the tracking with them, and I've specifically recently watched a lot of their games to get caught up on that. It's kind of died off a little bit. Just not to say he's playing bad, but I don't think he's playing to the point that he will push himself into the lineup next season. I think he'll probably need another year in the AHL, and that's really fine. 18 years old, whatever, not a big deal. If you really want to be excited about somebody, from the Matt Savoy and the Yuri Kulik draft class is Noah Ostlund. I believe he had, I don't know if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, he had a hat trick. I think he had a hat trick 2 games ago. He scored again last night. I think he's up to like 25 points in his last 27 games. He got injured early in the year, and it kind of slowed him a little bit in his start. But since he has returned, probably the best player with Isak Rosén on the Amerks. I've always been an Ostlund believer. His size could be a thing, and it makes you wonder at his size if he can be a centerman in the NHL. I know he just said size isn't a big thing. We talked about Benson, but I think being a center, it does matter a little bit more. So that's the question marks and also the durability within that. But from a pure offensive talent standpoint, we are seeing it come through at a pro level. And, I am pretty excited about him. I'm curious where he fits moving forward, whether he's going to be a center or a winger. But really, if you want to talk about a guy who's going to push himself potentially into the lineup next season, I could still see him being in the AHL. Remember, Kulik had to go through 2.5 years of kind of pushing his way in. I could see the same for Aslan. I think this is his first AHL season. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. But I think he's the one I would say, if you don't include Rosine, who I would be surprised if he's even on the team next season. For some reason, they just don't believe in him, it seems.
Yeah.
But Aslan, I think, is the one to really be excited about. That could be the closest.
Rosine has those Kyrie Elam vibes to me right now when it comes to.
To me, it's frustrating because they're not really giving him a chance. When he is the leading, I think he might be back again, the leading scorer in the AHL. So it's not like he's doing nothing. He is a impact player in that league. But I think it's just frustrating that he's just not getting a chance. And really, it's frustrating for me when I see guys like Brett Murray out there where, I get it. I respect what Murray has done for the organization for years and helping these guys develop in the AHL. Maybe you're just trying to reward the guy. That's fine to a degree. It's very clear that he cannot play in the NHL. He didn't play the entire third period in Winnipeg, and I think the game before he didn't play the entire third period either if he was in the lineup for that game, or whatever game before that, he sat the entire third period that game too. He just can't keep up. And it is what it is. You don't got to keep trying forcing it. But I would rather see Rosane get that opportunity because he's a guy that I need to know, can he play on my team or not? Not Brett Murray. I don't need to know. He can't. We know he can't play in this league. I'd rather those minutes go to Rosane, but it is what it is.
I hear you. Well, you mentioned Aslan. It makes me think it's I see this might be a little bit of a lesson to, hey, maybe let's not judge the Jack Eichel trade, as a whole right now.
Right. That's right. I forgot he was the pick from the Eichel trade.
In that, along with Kravitz and with Alex Tuck. So there's still more work to be done potentially to see how that trade plays out. I have one more thing for you. I'm going to speak for, we'll say casual Sabres fans. And I'll say this too. Last week on the show, I had a guy named PK from Buffalo Sports Collective. We were talking about the difference between the Sabres and the Bills during the drought years. And I said on the show, and I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to own it. I'll say it right now again. The difference between those two teams is I used to root against the Bills, but it was never out of malice. I was like, look, they're out of the playoffs. They're done. Lose at the end. Let's try to get a franchise-altering draft pick. It was never out of malice. I have found myself this year rooting for the Sabres because I don't like them. I just don't feel like they're a likable team to me. And it kind of goes back to last year. I didn't like the way a lot of the players spoke after Granado got fired. I kind of felt like he was getting thrown under the bus by some of the players. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. Here's my question, though. Right now, so the Sabres are dead last in the East. I believe as we're recording this Monday night into Tuesday morning, they're fourth from the bottom, I believe, in the standings right now. Yep. With the draft, with the lottery, it's the top. How does the draft? I can't remember. The draft lottery, where is it the top three? How many can you move down? Like if the Sabres finish fourth, what's the worst that they would draft if the lottery obviously went against them? I think it's only one, isn't it? Or is it three?
You can the top 10 picks. Is you can move up 10 or 7? 7 or 10. It's one of those in my head. You can move up 7 or 10 picks from where you are. So really it's only like the top 10 picks, I'm pretty sure, have a legitimate chance to win number one overall.
That much, yes. That I know, but it's like I can't remember.
Well, how far could they fall? They could fall down like 3, I think is the max you could fall down.
Okay. So taking away the malice part of it and the unlikability, how I feel about them, not all fans feel that way. So I don't want to represent a fan base. That's not true. Right now, this draft, without getting into the prospects, I'm not going to even know who the hell you're talking about, and it's way too early for that. But I've heard this feels like a class where it's like 3 or 4 are in that top tier.
Yes.
And then there's
I would say 3.
3?
I'm at 3.
So here we are in another season going into the Sabres got 13 games left. They'll have 12 after they play Ottawa tonight, Tuesday night, whatever. I'm at a point losing is good. Is losing not good? Because you want one of those three players. Not that I have any faith that they'll work out or whatever with this team, but I mean, getting hot at the end of the season and winning. They got 13 games left. If they go 7-6 and they climb from fourth best odds down to seventh or eighth, what is that doing? It's just there's not. I know they're not trying.
They'd have a ways to go to climb the standings. They'd have to put together a couple wins to even climb up a spot or two.
So you're saying that there's probably a tier where there's three. Like tier one is three players, and then the next tier would start with like probably the fourth prospect.
So I'll ask you this question for you now, because I'm curious. Do you know who the top rated prospect, or at least you know what position he plays in this draft?
I believe, if I heard correctly, isn't he yet another defenseman?
It is another left shot
defenseman. Jesus.
Another left shot defenseman, Matthew Schaefer. Now I will say, Matthew Schaefer is unreal, very good. But of course, this seems to happen every time we get here. Darlene, power. Here comes Matthew Schaefer. Now, I don't think they're going to get to the top. I mean, they could, but the odds behind it are pretty small. But when they've won the lottery, they've been the worst team in the league. I don't think you're going to go from 4 or 5 to 1. It rarely happens. Right. So don't need to worry about that. But it's just funny. They're within striking distance, and of course, it's the defenseman. My two guys for me, beyond Schaefer, I think goes number 1. I think he should go number 1. The two guys behind him are, I had James Hagens number 2, but I think now I've flipped it. I would go Michael Misa number 2, James Hagens number 3. And then Porter Martone is that 4 guy. But for me, from what I've started to watch, because of course I have to start watching in March for these guys, and people I've talked to a little bit, I think he's falling back a little bit from that pack, from those top 3. But yeah, like if you can get your hands on Michael Misa, that kid is impressive. And even Hagens, he's a centerman. He plays for, is it BC or BU? I can't remember which one. Whatever one has like the excellent.
There was a point early on. There was a point early on with Hagens where he was one of the 2 guys, and I only remember that. I don't know these prospects, for shit, but I do remember saying halt for Hagens before this season even started. I was already in tank mode with this stupid ass team. So basically, what you're saying is, ideally, there's a 3-player like top tier, and then it starts to dip.
Then there's a gap, and look, I'm not saying there's not some good players in there. I mean, there are after those top 3, but really, I think it's those 3, then a space, and then maybe more Martone, and then your group behind that. So, I'm not going to get into a whole thing with all these guys. There's some guys in here that I really do like. A couple kids out of Sweden. There's some other guys, and we'll get into it more as, of course, we go here and we get closer. Like Victor Eklund, Anton Frundell, there's a couple guys too that'll maybe be in that middle to end of back end of the top 10 that I have some interest in.
I'm looking at the standings right now. The Sabres, the worst they're going to finish is 3rd from the bottom. The Nashville, they're 2 points clear of Nashville right now. But Chicago and San Jose are buried. So those are going to be.
You got to pay attention too, because the Sabres have played the least amount of games in the league, pretty much. Yeah, you have to pay attention to points percentage. So, like on Nashville, they have a pretty significant lead on points percentage already.
Yeah. So it's looking like they're going to have to play really bad down the stretch.
They'll have to lose almost the rest of their games to catch Chicago and San Jose.
So pretty much what you're saying is it's a 4-person top of the draft, or a 3-person top of the draft, and the Sabres are going to end up picking 4th or 5th. That's the way it's going to go. That's just the way this season has been. All right, let's leave it there, because I'll tell you what, Chad, man, we've been going for almost an hour and a half. By the way, shout out, man, almost 1,200 people here live in the chat on a late Monday night on a Sabres show. Then they like them some Chad DeDominicis, man, because I don't talk Sabres often out here. And it's funny because I've had a lot, and I appreciate everybody who's been in the live comments on the video side. There's a lot of good questions. Probably do another 45 minutes. Stuff we didn't even get to. I do. I appreciate it. And by the way, if you are not subscribed to Expected Buffalo, what are we doing here, man? If you're a hockey guy, you're a Sabres fan, that is a must. Make sure you follow Chad on Twitter at CMDDominicis. I appreciate you, man. This was a lot of fun. Go Yankees, by the way, if you're watching on the video. Got a Yankees fan. By the way, I screwed them. I know you're a Yankees fan. I had a fantasy baseball draft last night. 4th overall pick, Aaron Judge was on the board. I could not take him. Somebody stunningly took a picture with the first pick. And then it went Ohtani, Witt, and then Aaron Judge was there. So I could not take him. Yeah. And then I took Max Fried, and it was my second pitcher off the board. So what I'm telling you is I pretty much just cemented a 3rd or 4th place finish in the AL East this year.
Thanks for that, Pat. Appreciate that.
I appreciate you, though, man. And I do appreciate everybody for watching and for listening. I'll be back with a brand new show. Matt Warren from SB Nation joins me tomorrow.